Now, speaking about farming, Mr. James, you are the Director of Agriculture.
Yes.
So, can you tell us about some of the new initiatives within that sector that, besides the farmer registration?
Yes, I will. If I just wanted, Jamelia, maybe there are one or two little other tidbits that maybe I think the general public could benefit from about the registration. For example, the card that we will be using, the card is valid for 3 years. We don't believe that you should. We don't think your personal, information change that fast and so on. So, the card, one will keep it for 3 years. We don't hope that you would lose it within that period. But I suppose if one loses it, then we will replace it. We didn't really put anything like a replacement cost, anything like that, right? So it's valid for 3 years. But the farmer registration, the concept of registering as a farmer, is something that we want persons to do every year. So that the registration fee, the payment structure that I outlined to you earlier, is an annual thing. But you keep your card, the card itself, you'll be able to keep the card for a period of 3 years. So we think it's very simple. We think it's straightforward. And we hope that folks would come on board. Now, let me say something else as well. In case folks were wondering, well, do I qualify? How do I meet the criteria? Basically, in a very specific way, persons who are involved in livestock. We say on average, if someone have like 5 cattle, usually, as I said, 5 cattle requires about 5 acres. So 5 cattle around that we would want, like the minimum. That's the bottom line. Of course, we would love if someone would come in with a large number of animals, cattle, for example, especially because right now there's a very good market for ground beef, and so we want to encourage the cattle farmers to increase their numbers and so on. But if you have at least 5, that's workable with us, and we would want to consider you that you've reached a level where you could build into a good enterprise. Some of the other animals, sheep and goat, about 10, at least 10. I have a concern with sheep and goat. Sheep and goat, every year we lose a lot of sheep and goat to dog attacks. Yeah. You go by a farmer. I remember visiting one farmer, and you're excited when he bring his flock in. Things look good. He has 300 animals, and that's great because you have 300 animals, and you have several mothers, ewes are in between there, and they're all pregnant, and you're looking forward to your flock increasing by 40 in the next few months. And then you go back by the farmer, and he's sad because he's way down. He's down to like 80. Animals.
From 300?
Yes. I mean, you sustain...
That's a significant loss.
You get 2 dog attack, you're almost out of business. And so, it's so difficult to get the number of sheep and goat to grow, because one day you're way up, and then a few months after, you're way down. And this is one of the things, this is one of the areas that have a lot of potential, I mean, local mutton, wonderful. People would prefer it, but sometimes you can't get enough of it. So we want to appeal to persons with the stray dogs, the dogs untethered, loose and so on. I think some people know what's going on, and you need to keep your dogs under proper control. Also, the farmer, he needs to have sturdy and secure places to keep the animals in the night. Because a lot of these things happen in the night. I mean, if it comes in the day, sometimes there's a chance somebody might see something, and the real danger is averted. In the night, late in the night, a lot of folks are sleeping. So it's a big issue, and so we look at it, but we say, listen, if you're even down at 10, we encourage you to register. When it comes to pigs, of course, I'm looking at the animals that we raise the most of. This is what our agriculture consists of. Pigs, I mean, a lot of folks love their pork. If you have about 3 breeding sows, it implies therefore that you have more than 3 pigs, because very often you would have at least 1 boar. Most people have a boar. If you have 3 breeding sows, then you will have other sows which you intend to slaughter. So, but there's certain implications within this. 3 breeding sows implies maybe about 15 or so animals, because of how a modern system should work. So 3 breeding sows, and in the poultry sector, if you have maybe at least 50 animals, 50 fowls, and I'm very happy that the number of persons who are interested in raising layers, birds for laying, is increasing. Similarly, there was a time that you hardly could get local broiler meat, local poultry meat. Everything was frozen. It was almost like poultry came from the freezer. But now, several persons are going into raising their own meat birds, and so hopefully, I really hope that, I mean, this was tried before. There was an enterprise in the Halfway Tree area where there was a way called Broilerson, I think the name was, but it didn't really take root the way it should have. But we've come back a good 20 years after, maybe 25, 30 years after, and I hope now that Kititians would buy into the idea of local fresh birds. Even in some Caribbean countries, you go to the market, you get a fresh bird already plucked, meaning the hairs are off. Or but if you like, you could get a live bird. You buy a live bird, and wings are tied, legs are tied. You take it home, and you put it to rest, and you could have the meat and so on. Fresh, breathing, So we're looking towards that. And while I'm on this, I would say about the layers, I want to encourage us to use local eggs. Those persons who eat eggs, use local eggs. There's so many advantages that local possess over imported. A lot of these, some of these countries into layers, there's certain diseases that they have been exposed to that we don't have, and some of these things are transmittable in the eggs. Some of these things are also transmittable to humans, and especially some people use eggs fresh, raw, not heavily cooked or processed. And whenever these kind of things happen, you're bringing the chances of being infected intensifies, it increases. So we need to be aware that, hey, listen, a lot of these things we don't have. I mean, in another program we can go into details of what these things are and so on, and therefore it gives greater advantage to local. So all in all, the persons who want to register, it gives an idea, and then I will just say something about the crop farmers now. Usually, in terms of those persons into crops, we look at, again, like the livestock, a multiplicity of criteria. Sometimes we look at the size of the enterprise. Usually, if it's a backyard, we classify it as a backyard garden. We don't list backyard persons as farmers. Although some people on a house lot buy, sometimes a house lot you can do quite a bit, and especially a good sized house lot, maybe a 1 acre, your output sometimes can equal a small farmer. It may even surpass a small farmer, I do admit, but we usually put them in a different category than farmer, than full-time farmer. We also look at what the enterprise is contributing, whether you have to live by it, or it's 1/3 of your income and so on. So we do that in crop farming, and then come up with who we think is the minimum crop farmer, who we think is the minimum livestock farmer. So those are some of the things that guide us, and gives us an idea as to whether we think someone qualifies. Of course, all of the persons who had IDs in the past, naturally qualify, because it means that we're using a similar criteria. So they too qualify. And if there's a new person, there have been some new persons. For example, they've come to the department and asked for land or for assistance so that they could go into farming. That too is obvious that we have already agreed that they're into farming. So it's almost, although I went through all of this, it's not complicated if it sounded that way. There are simpler ways of doing it. One, a lot of these farmers have registered before. Two, others who are new, they have already come to us. And once we've given them the nod to go out there and assist themselves, they too are qualified. So I think we have 99% of the persons we're targeting already covered.
Well, Mr. James, I still want to hear about the new initiatives that the department has undertaken. But we are at the time where, well, I would say the most important segment of the show, and that is the call-in segment. Yes, listeners, we do want to hear from you. So we'll put on our headphones and we'll await the callers.